less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor interview.
Well, what's up, cash flow contractors? This is the part where normally Khalil says to me, "How you doing, Martin?" And I would say, "How you doing, Khalil?" Except he's not here. You just have me today. He's on his way to Houston. I'd say you just have me and our guest, Bruce Ross, who is coming to us from New Zealand. And the thing I always think about New Zealand and Australia is kids in Oklahoma, if you say you're digging a hole, you're going to dig a hole to China. Well, that's not where you'd wind up. If you point straight down from Norman, Oklahoma, where I'm sitting, you'd come out of the earth just a few miles west of Perth, Australia. So Bruce is about as far away as you can get from Oklahoma without starting to come back. But what that means is we get a different perspective on life, and we also get to hear a really cool accent. So, Bruce, before I introduce you, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this conversation, seeing what unfolds.
Yeah, me too. Just a little bit about Bruce. Bruce operates in the realm of inner game of leadership. So this podcast is about leadership and mindset. He operates, or his approach to leadership development is research-based and has been honed over 37 years of working directly with a full spectrum of leaders from emergent companies through established companies. The resulting framework that he's developed is designed to equip leaders to maintain a solid VUCA, which he has defined in his bio, but I'll let him do that further. And at the moment, we're experiencing VUCA on steroids. And I will say that's a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I don't know why you think things are uncertain nowadays, Bruce.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on? I don't know what it's like down there. But Bruce has spoken to over 35 or 33 annual conferences and been published internationally on the topic of leadership and accessing peak mental performance. Plus, he's personally coached over 1,200 business owners, which is leaders and entrepreneurs. That's very impressive to me. I thought I was experienced, and I've done about 320. So, Bruce, anything you'd like to add about who Bruce is?
This is the area of leadership has been a fascination for me, and what inspired it actually was being crushed by an inept leader. So I had someone in my experience, and I had high regard, high respect because he had this position, but he eviscerated others and myself in public. And I couldn't understand that. I couldn't comprehend what was going on and why. And so I felt powerless to be able to take him on. So I researched, well, what was leadership? And so I started reading books. And that's where, that was whatever it is, 30 odd years ago. And it's the grit in the oyster that created the pearl. And the different layers of information, and it's where I am today, and I'm passionate about the area of leadership, and that's not. You've got multiple versions of leadership, and what I have realized is that I used to hold the view that leaders were that person, they'd be the extrovert on a white horse charging into the great unknown, saying "Follow me," all seeing, all doing, all knowing, and I've subsequently come to realize that. No, it's actually about how you help others develop and grow. So I'm more of a servant leader styled leadership person.
Well, I love that because I just a little bit about me. I've been in business for 46 years now, and mindset and leadership were topics that when I was on my own in my own companies, I acknowledge that they exist, but I used to think of it as just a bunch of touchy-feely garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry, but that's,
yeah.
and you can read all these books about it. And I'm glad you just provided that definition, because all of the books I've read over the years, none of them have ever actually defined leadership, or none that I can recall.
Wow.
And it was kind of like, well, how do you go after something when you can't even define what it is?
Yeah,
And so, and in speaking to our audience, we have a lot of contractors, and I always imagine them driving around in their pickup trucks, worrying about what's going on today. I think everybody I've had contact with understands that there is such a thing as leadership, but very few, well, few, less than the majority, pay any attention to it and try to hone their skills and become better at it.
right.
And that's kind of what you do, is it not? Help people do that?
Yeah. So my definition of leadership, and I would say it's mine, and in some part it errs on the side of more the touchy-feely side, is releasing the brilliance with
Well,
others.
hey, let me say this. When I started coaching 11 years ago, I started reading some self-help books, things like that, along with technical books.
Yeah,
And I came to understand, I didn't finish my point at all. My bad. I came to understand that leadership and mindset is where the action is. The rest of the stuff is just kind of tools. So I've done a 180
right,
completely.
right.
But that's not what I thought way back when. I just thought that's a pain. So I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, no problem, no problem. Um, yeah, my definition is releasing the brilliance with others.
Wow.
So how do you think it a bit like a parent? They're looking to grow the brilliance of their kids. Same concept. So you've got to nurture them, you've got to support them, you've got to give them tough love sometimes, you've got to provide a role model, um, and you got to listen to them and acknowledge them as being young humans on the way up, or the people who are around you. I believe the quality of a leader is their ability to create self-leaders around them. And that is people who have clarity, have understanding, have choices, and therefore they stay with you because they want to, as opposed to they have to. So I think one of the elements of a leader is, can they generate loyalty? And one of the biggest ways to generate loyalty, or how do you know when you've generated loyalty, is that your team, your staff, give of their discretionary effort. So you've got your mandated effort, which is you're paid to be here between whatever it is, 7:30 and 5, or 9 and 5, whatever. That's the mandated effort. You're paid to be here. But discretionary effort is above and beyond. So I was speaking to a young lady yesterday, a lady that I coach, and she was telling me that that here in New Zealand we're quite fortunate in that we're not in lockdown, but some companies have chosen to work from home 3 days a week, and home 3 days a week and at work 2 days a week. You can do it however you want to. And she went in on one of the days where people were working from home, and she went in early, and she was surprised to see one of her staff members there. He wasn't supposed to be. He was supposed to be at home. And what he had done, he had bought a frame, an empty frame, and he had printed pictures of each of the individuals inside the company, and team photos and this sort of thing, and put it up there. And he wanted that to be a surprise for everyone when they came back to work. So they'd walk in, and so he had Christmas decorations around it to make it really look nice. But he'd been in there for an hour putting all this stuff up, and obviously he spent time blowing up pictures and so forth. And he just wanted to be a pleasant and positive surprise for his mates. And I thought, wow, that's what I call discretionary effort.
Okay,
And I
this
said,
was not the boss. This was
no, but
an
she walked in
employee.
and found him doing that, because she went in. She
Wow.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And she said, "What are you?" And then she looked up, and it was just. And what's interesting is that she says, "I don't think I'm a very good boss." And I'm going, "You what?" I mean, the evidence is right there, but that's probably one of the qualities. If you're worried about being a good boss, you are probably being a good boss, because you're always looking for better, always looking for improvement, always asking questions of yourself. Well, how can I do this better? And how can I work with them? And how do I get the best out of them? And what is it I'm doing that's stifling them? And a whole range of questions, which is, there's a direct parallel with parenting. if you're worrying about being a good parent, you're probably being a good parent, as opposed to assuming and you've got to do it my way and all the rest of it. So I was just gobsmacked when I heard her telling the story, and she was still humble, going, "Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm being a good leader or not." I'm going, "What?" Yeah.
Well, I mean, mandated versus discretionary effort. I wrote that down because I'm going to hang on to that one. That's an insightful gauge. I hadn't ever thought of it that way, but it makes total sense.
Right.
That implies they want to be there as opposed to being done,
Yeah. Yeah.
being
Yeah. They have
forced,
to.
being forced to do it.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you: is there a question or statement I've heard in the past? Leaders are born, not made. When
Okay.
do you buy into that? And then that's going to carry us into, I'm going to presume, given what you do, that they can be made.
Yeah.
And so how we might go about doing that. So first question, do they have to be born, or can anybody be a leader with the proper attention and training? And
Yeah. So I subscribe to, yes, anyone can, but I've got to recognize that there are certain traits which do enable leadership, a leadership orientation. So size, if
you
you're
mean
bigger, if
physical
you're
size?
taller, yeah,
Oh, really?
physical,
Okay.
yeah. Because if there's a taller, bigger person, I think it's maybe part of evolution, and they're the biggest, strongest. We tend to look to them.
Right.
Um,
Often
and
mistakenly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the extroverts, you think, well, extroverts because they like talking and they like talking, So you've got introverts. The interesting thing, introverts get their power, get their energy from being by themselves, whereas extroverts get their power or energy by being with other people. And they like talking and they talk out their thoughts. So that's how they discover what's actually going on in their head. They've got to talk it out. Whereas introverts, you ask them a question and they'll pause and they'll reflect because they want the answer to be a good one, to be a solid one, and they've thought it through. So they've got to go through the internal consideration. And so there's this pause. So there's some significant difference. So you think, well, leaders, they are born extroverts. So you think, oh, right. So we can tend to go down that track. But the interesting thing is that in the book Good to Great, there was research done. Have you heard of the book Good to Great?
Oh, yeah.
Jim Collins. It's one of those
yeah.
iconic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he took 10 companies, 5 peers. They were in exactly the same industry and they created about the same time. They went through the same economic ups and downs. One flourished and one failed. And so he looked at to try and identify what was common amongst the ones that flourished. And he came up with some fantastic insights. One of them was what's called level 5 leadership.
Right.
Level 5 leadership, and he defined it. But these were the people who were so successful in those that had thrived that not only did they thrive, but 5 years after they'd left, the legacy of leadership continued. So that was if you talk about how effective is that leader, it's
Right.
when they've gone, they've created a culture which continues of success. So the two elements he saw in common between these leaders, and interestingly, they were introverts. So this was because that book Good to Great came out, I think it was about the 80s or something like that.
Right.
And so this was a major challenge to the philosophies that you've got to be an extrovert and you've got to be handsome and good looking, all those typical things.
I kind of thought of it when I read it as being the strong silent type. That's probably not completely right, but yeah, that struck me as well.
Yeah. So it was a will of iron or a will of steel, but
Right.
if it's got to happen. If I say it happens, it's got to happen. But extreme humility. Interesting, isn't it? So,
Right.
so if you ask me the question, are they grown or are they born? Yes, there's certain attributes which assist you. You be born with them, but you can absolutely make it. So what do I mean by that is you can look at some mousy housewife whose daughter gets raped and then becomes a spokesperson on behalf of the organization against rape. And you think, what happened? she was not a leader, and then she stepped up and became a leader. And that is, she had purpose. She had a driving purpose. There was something she cared deeply about. So then you're talking about, well, what moves a person, or what they are a servant of, or what they want to promote in the world. See, I have a perspective on leadership that there are no leaders in the world.
There are no leaders in the world?
There are no leaders in the world. So here we are, we're talking about leaders, and
yeah.
I'm supposed to be a leadership development consultant. And I'm coming out going, standing firm and saying, there are no leaders in the world. And my reasoning behind that is that we are all followers. What you have as a leader is a more dedicated follower of a purpose.
Wow. I'm writing all these things down, Bruce. Show notes, Ethan.
So some of us can agree, oh yeah, I'm sort of interested in that thing over there. But then you have someone who says, no, this thing over here is damned important. So they are a more dedicated supportive follower of and they're prepared to put themselves out on behalf of that thing. So they are more, if you like, more principled. So the question to ask whenever I see a leader is, what is it they're following? Or what is it their master? So
Simon Sinek has a book called Leaders Eat Last.
Right.
And I think that's probably, I've read it, it's been a while, but I think that's kind of his message too.
Right. Yeah. So you can look at any leader and go, well, by their actions and by their words, what are they supporting? What are they the servant of? And so for instance, Jacinda Ardern here in New Zealand, our Prime Minister, in moments of crisis, that's when our real selves come out. So we had the Christchurch massacre, 51 people killed by a lone gunman, in two locations. And her first place that she went to is You Are Us. So she was talking to the Muslim community, and that's what she became known as, You Are Us. And so you could look at her and say, so what was she following, or what was she a servant of? And I would say she was a servant of compassion. She was a servant of respect. She was a servant or a spokesperson of, or a representative of, or a follower of high human dignity. So it's quite a good way of looking at a person, any person, especially a leader, as to what are they a representative of, or what are they the spokesperson of, or what are they a servant of, by their actions and and what they say. So that's why I say there are no leaders.
Oh, I love that.
Of course there are leaders. Right. It's a nuanced answer, but sure. That's why I say that. Yeah.
Well, my dad used to say that a CEO, president of a company, and it's congruent with what you're saying, their first job is to replace themselves, which is a little bit outside of what we're talking about, but it's still to replace themselves. Second job is they're the keepers of the vision for the company.
Yeah.
And the third is they're the keepers of the culture for a company. And that's not directly what you're talking about, but to keep a vision for the company, there has to be a purpose, a personal purpose and a company purpose. And they need to articulate that, and they will gather followers who identify with that purpose, and then also with the leader. Yeah, but great insights. So if, again, most of our audience is contractors, manufacturers, people like that.
Yeah.
They want to become better leaders.
Yep.
How do they do that? Now, I mean, obviously one of the things is we'll have your contact information in the show notes, but
yeah, sure. All right. Yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, hey,
there's only one way, and that's to sign up with me.
Well, that is a way, and if you have no ways at this moment, at least that's a start, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But how? When I talk about vision and culture and things like that with a lot of small businesses, it kind of falls in that realm of touchy-feely again. Yeah. No, sure. I'm here. I got to make money, and Jim's got to show up at work, or I'm going to have to kick his tail. Because that's the time, they're not thinking about it. But if somebody said, I would like to be a better leader, but I'm just a guy or a gal. I just started this company, and I'm just a guy. Yeah. Or a gal, very much.
Yeah.
What Well, first of all, in your experience, why does somebody start to think that?
Yeah,
Right? Because,
yeah,
when your student's ready, the teacher appears. But why do they
yeah,
start thinking about it? What can they do?
yeah, absolutely. So I will give you two levels of answer. And the first level is, what is the usual approach to leadership? And if your listeners, or maybe you, can draw, I'm going to give you a quick diagram to draw or write down. If you can draw three circles in like a triangle, so one at
Okay.
the apex at the top, one on the right.
Interlocking.
Yep.
Mhm.
No, not interlocking, just
Oh, okay.
separated. And so one at 3 o'clock and one at 9 o'clock, one at 12 o'clock.
Right.
And you can say, so what's essential? This is the essentials for achieving anything. And we could say in terms of leadership, exactly the same thing. So you need vision.
Okay.
That's the one at the top, vision, which is I need some order of clarity about what I want the future to look like. And a leader carries that vision, is able to articulate it far more clearly. In fact, they've seen themselves in it. So it's almost like walking into a house. They can say, there's a window here, there's a door here, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's very clear. They can articulate it, and there's even
Right.
a picture that they can speak to. The second on the right, at 3 o'clock, that circle there is action. And so what you're talking about is, hey, we've got a company, we're contractors, we've got to take action. It's all about the action. It's all around having some order of clarity about the future. We've got to take action. And that could be systems, processes, behaviors, habits, planning, reviews. Those are all the whole things associated with taking action. So if you've got vision and you've got action, what's the third thing? And the third thing is, in fact, mindset. So it's how you think about those two things. So your view on them. So you may have a vision, and inside your head we go, oh, I don't know if I can do that. So that's your mindset. And so that will impact or flavor or taint that vision. And equally, I've got to do these things to achieve that vision. You may look at that and go, yeah, easy peasy. And they're going to take action. Or you can say, oh, I don't know. And then it's procrastination. So it's avoidance or inaction.
Okay.
Okay. So what is it a leader needs? You can say clarity about the future. Hey, guys, this is where we're going. This is how it's got to be. These are the steps we're going to take. And I'm going to tell you specifically, boom, 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 boom. And they will follow that because there's real clarity. Fantastic. But the mindset piece is actually what transfers. What do I mean by that is, if you reflect back as a teacher, primary school, we call them primary and secondary school, but when you're in education, and you think of the teachers that you really got the subject, you think, oh, wow, that was inspiring. For me, I had one year I had a really good English teacher. The next year I had a terrible one, and I was caused to reflect. And the reason why it was a good one, the first one, was he loved the subject. So his mindset or his passion came out, and I got infused with that. So that's what I mean by the mindset piece, because you can be going through the motions with the vision and with the actions, and I'll just do what you're bloody told. We're going to get this thing done over here, and I don't give too much information. And it shows my mindset. Or I can be passionate about what I'm doing, and that's what enthuses and infuses my followers. Okay, so that's around the mindset piece. So I said it's going to answer this at two levels. The first one was that, and that is a really good. To me, it's when I do coaching and someone says I've got an issue, I'd say, well, where do you think the answer lies? In vision? Are you clear? Are you clear or unclear? Or is it action? You need a system, a process, you need accountability, or is it mindset? And so when you're dealing with a person, you've got to be able to help them as a leader in all three. Okay. So that's at the first level, and that's it's what I call more traditional, or more, there's probably no news in that in terms of what, if you read books. I want to take it to a deeper level, and that is, I believe that what lies at the heart of leadership is in fact energy. So it's not vision, it's not action, and it's not mindset. They're essential, clearly, but none of those happen if your energy is low. Let me explain. When our energy level is high, we're more open, we're more confident, we're more robust, we're more relaxed, we're more confident, we're more generous. We can plan, we are creative, we're insightful, we're in the best of ourselves. And in fact, it's easy to be in a leadership state because you're just being yourself, right? when your energy level is high. When our energy level is low, we become more brittle, more blamey, more caustic, more explosive, or implosive, goes either way. We become disconnected from ourselves and from others, and we are not in a leadership state. We can't lead. In fact, when energy level is low, the best you can do is manage, which is keep the status quo, maybe tweak it a little bit, but fundamentally nothing's going to change when your energy level is low. So, and here's the kicker. The job of a leader is to give energy. Just like the job of a parent is to give energy to the child or children, the job of children is to suck their parents' energy. The job of staff is to suck your energy. Now, that's just the natural way of things. You walk onto the work site or into the room or whatever it is, people will look at you, your staff will look at you, and they will suck your energy. And it's a bit like a baby and a pregnant mother. They will take what they need, whether the mother has plenty of it or not. So if you're low in energy, you walk to work, your staff are going to suck what energy you have, either at distance, or they'll come up and they'll want you to give them time, answer this problem, this issue, or maybe there'll be an issue themselves that they want your time to fix. They want your energy. So therefore, the job of a leader, because you said, well, Bruce, where do we start? I think it starts at a very simple place, and that is we need plenty of energy for our own personal well-being, and especially if we're going to be a leader. So now that suggests we need some sense of self. What sucks my energy and what energizes me? And then ideally, how do I optimize that? Because if I'm going to be a leader, I can't afford to be sucked dry. Now, with COVID, we've all been sucked. If you like, we've all been hemorrhaging energy because distraction, uncertainty. I've now got to think about a whole bunch of things I've never had to think about before. I mean, is my neighbor going to give me COVID? Can I put my hand on that door handle? Should I wear a mask? All these sorts of things we didn't even have to think about before. So distraction. So leaking energy. So that's why leaders have found it very hard, especially very hard because everyone looks to them to have the answers. They expect it. But the great thing about that is you can be totally honest and say, sorry, guys, I don't have the answer, but together we do. This is the whole thing about collaboration or bringing the best out in others, bringing brilliance out in others. And I think that's one of the lessons around leadership that's been successful in COVID, because the other one, do what you're bloody told. People would say, up yours, mate.
Right.
But I don't, and no one knows the answers. It's never happened, and it's happening across the world. There are no books written on it as it happened. So I don't have the answers, but together we can find the answers. Very powerful. Because then I'm listening to you, and it's changed the dynamic. Before, as if you like, parent dynamic. I'm the boss and you're the employee. Now it changes the dynamic that we're peers because I want to really listen to what you have to say. Wow.
Right.
Changes the dynamic. And that's actually very healthy. I believe that's a very healthy dynamic. Collaboration is very important. So this area of energy, you said what makes for a leader. So this lady mousy, housewifey lady whose daughter got raped, she got passionate and she saw meaning. She got energized about a thing. And she went out and she spoke about the thing. And so she had energy to give. And there were people, full runs to the empty, there were people listening and said, yeah, right, we look to you. This
is so good. I almost hate to interrupt you because I want you to lose where you are. But which comes first, the energy or the passion? I mean,
what passion comes first is self-awareness.
Okay.
So you've got to be aware that you're passionate about those things.
Okay.
So it's the self-awareness.
And that is kind of hard to do without help, is it not? I mean, people sit around and become self-aware.
Well, typically we become self-aware when something's not working. Okay. And you look out there and you try and blame it over there. And then that over there, and then that over there. And you think, hang on, there's something in common between all of these. And what's in common is me.
Well, do people do that? I mean, I know people do, but is that common that people, as you look around the United States, which there's a lot more angst than just COVID, but with our politics and all that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everybody can become, well, certainly haven't become self-aware. That
Yeah.
seems like a great exercise, is to learn how to do that. And my question is, can you just, sure, somebody has, but can you routinely do that yourself?
Yeah, it's a developed skill. So I'll give you, see, there's a real subtlety to it. And let me ask you a question. This is how subtle it is, because so at the moment I'm saying stuff and you're thinking
Right.
as a result of what I'm saying, right? And that thinking is that voice in your head saying, oh, Bruce means this. Oh, that triggers this. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a load of crap. But there's that voice going inside your head. It's interpreting the outer world.
Right.
Okay, got it. So that's your brain interpreting the outer world, making sense. The brain is a sense-making machine. So here's my question. Are you your thoughts?
Do we have time for that?
That's a bit philosophical.
No, I understand that epistemological.
Yeah.
Do you guys even exist except that I'm sitting here seeing you, because you're not even real. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
another philosophical approach, but
Yeah.
um, well, so you want an answer to that?
Yeah, just off the top of your head, or maybe
Well,
you can
I'm
answer.
gonna say yes, I am, but I've reached that
Okay,
level of
and
thinking.
I think most people, there's stuff going on in their head, and they speak it out or they react from that, and that's who they are because that's what's coursing through their body. But here's a second approach. Is there a part of you that can observe the thoughts that you're having in your head? So, if we went quiet,
Sure.
and we're not going to, but if we went quiet and I said, okay, now, can you observe the thoughts that you're having? You go, yeah, I can step back and, oh, there's that thought and there's that thought.
Why
Blah, blah,
did I
blah.
think that? And what does
Yeah,
that
that's a
mean?
curious thought. And, so there's this other part. And the analogy, it's a bit like spectator versus participant. So on a football field, you're playing the game, and that's when most people are in life and having thoughts and are just participating and coming out and what they're thinking, they're speaking. And then you've got the spectator who's in the I think you call them bleachers, but in the seats on the side, observing the game. And there can be part of you that can observe your reactions to things and your thoughts. And I would submit that you are the thing, the entity, the whatever, that observes your thoughts.
Okay.
And so there's a separation out. And so that observer part looks and goes, wow, Bruce is angry at the moment. Or later, he can reflect and go, yesterday, as I reflect back, he said that and she reacted, or he reacted that, someone else reacted a certain way. Oh, I'm not sure if that thought process and what you said there, Bruce, was on target. So that's the beginnings of self-awareness, is that there's another part in you that gets to observe and gets to make assessments and decisions about what you've just done. So I can look back and go, oh, I really regretted saying X. And that was the observer part of me watching the bit that actually played in the game and going, oh, you said the wrong thing there, mate. And therefore this one up here, and I think this one, the one that's in the bleachers, actually has more power to say, hey, mate, don't do that. Don't do that, do this. And
One
so
of the
that's,
things that I talk about frequently, matter of fact, my mission in my coaching is to eliminate suffering from small business. Okay.
right. Yeah.
The suffering that I deal with comes from two sources, and one I call self-limiting beliefs, which is
Yeah.
what we're talking about here today. The other is lack of knowledge or information and the knowledge to use it, which are skills. But those are the two things.
Yeah. Nice.
And the mindset, which you're much deeper into it, but the mindset, I have clients walking around is everybody, tell me if you disagree, sets their limits. I mean, somebody like Steve Jobs or Richard Branson, their limits are so much higher that I can't even see them. But I talk about this stuff all the time, and my wife catches me setting my own limits. And I think about this. I'm in the bleachers thinking about it, and I still set my own limits.
Yeah.
Clients I heard a guy say the other day, folks like us don't blank. Okay.
Right.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
Folks
Yeah.
like us don't.
Yeah.
And until I catch them on it, I guess the thing I'm talking about is how does it get started to realize that you're on the bleachers and you can do something about it, that you're responsible for yourself, that you can become self-aware and that you
Yeah.
can make changes.
Yeah.
And I have to deal with that with virtually every client I have
Yeah.
to a greater or lesser extent. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of the catalyst in that. I'm not saying I always create nirvana, but I'm the
Yeah. Yeah.
catalyst in that by challenging things that I hear.
Yeah.
How does the listener, of course, they're listening to you right now, so maybe this will start it. How does a guy driving around suddenly say, you know what, I'm going to change? It just happens spontaneously, or does it take listening to this podcast? Or
Yeah. So the actual tip can happen anytime. It might be in this podcast. There's something said that triggers someone that goes, "Oh, right, now's the time." Typically, we've got to experience real pain. Typically, and it's called agitation, or it's called being stuck, constipation. This feels horrible. I've got to get out of here. I don't know what it. I don't know. And we at that point we actually make a decision. I can't stay here.
I love
Now,
that.
what that means is I need help. Mate, can you help? I'm stuck over here. So the self-awareness is I'm in such pain, such agitation, and I can no longer live with it. Now, what we tend to do is we feel pain and we handle it, or we feel pain and we numb it. But if the pain continues and it gets too big and we still continue to numb it, it's almost like it wants to come out, but we push it back down again, and it becomes such a constipated mess that we just totally recoil and become isolated and so on. Or you go to a mate and say, "Mate, I feel like crap. I need help." So it's probably at that point where they've been boiling on it, they've been sitting in it for quite a long time. So it might be that something that's said today triggers them, but they would have been sitting on it and sitting with it for a long time first.
Right.
Before they make. So
I love that. Jim Rohn, whom I'm sure you know who he is, but he says the word disgust is
right.
is a wonderful thing. He said it has a negative connotation in most people's mind, but he said, no, it's great. It's when you've suffered long enough and in a business context and you say, damn it, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to raise my prices, fire that guy, bid it, whatever it is, or I'm going to go broke because I'm just not doing this anymore. And that's when they break through.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's not necessarily leadership, but it sounds like we're on the same
Well, that is
wavelength.
self-leadership.
Self-leadership.
In that moment, that is self-leadership. It's saying, I don't actually know what I want, but I know what I don't want. So I'm going to head over here, or
Right.
I'm at least going to look over here. So that's you expressing self-leadership.
Wow. That's another one I wrote down.
Okay.
Well, when there's infinite amount of information out there that says you have to have a why. And what do you think about that? I mean, having the vision isn't necessarily a why.
No, it's not. It's two different things.
So what do you think about having a why?
Crucial, fundamental, essential.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
What is your purpose? What is your why? Well, I'm going to make money, got to feed my family. Well, yes, but that's not a motivational next level why.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you suggest people discover their why?
Yeah, so I do have a process, and so I'll share the two preparatory exercises I get people to do to warm them up into the area. And the first is, and you can do both exercises on the one sheet. Okay. So if you've got a sheet of paper and you do a north-south, so it's in landscape page rather than portrait, landscape.
Yeah.
There's a north-south on the left-hand side, and there's an XY horizontal line that goes in the middle.
Okay.
So you've got an equal, above and below the line, and then on the left-hand side. Sorry, say again?
4 squares.
No, not 4 squares. So the line is right next to the left-hand margin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So up, down, north, south is next to the left-hand side of the page,
Okay.
but in the middle of the page is the
Horizontal.
XY, which is the horizontal.
Got it.
Okay, so in the extreme right of the horizontal line is your current age, whatever that is. Just put that in.
Oh, I got to get another piece of paper and
Yeah. And then where the two intersect is 0, which is where you're born.
Right.
So the line that goes across the page is your life.
Right.
Okay. So the first exercise is to consider what were the defining moments of your life. So, there's a defining moment when I was 8 because I came off my bike and my foot had to be amputated, or whatever it was, right? So you go through and you think, now these could be positive, so it could be above the line, could be positive experiences, or it could be negative, and it's probably going to be negative because those are the ones that really stand out.
Okay.
And so if it's deeply negative, then obviously it's down to the bottom of the page, or if it's highly a joyful experience, then it's near the top of the page. But I had a defining moment, and we typically don't have that many. If I think back on my life, I could probably name about 3 or 4, 5, perhaps, something like that. So don't worry if you don't get many. But they are standout that I say to you. So you're going down one track, you're going a certain route, and then your life changed. So I'll give you a very quick one for me as an example. So I was 17, nearly the end of my secondary school year. Secondary school, I don't know what you guys call it, but I was 17-ish. And I went over to the Philippines, and I was there for, 2 weeks. And I was being billeted by some really wealthy people, really wealthy family. Went in, I've never seen anything like it. They were, it was a guarded or walled settlement. You had to go in through gates, and when you got to their house, it was 12-foot high walls, palatial house, so much money that you had servants, they were cutting the grass with scissors.
Right, make it work.
Yeah. Now, I got there in the evening. There were about 6 sons, so they were Catholic environment, lots of large families. Next morning, we got into the van and went out through the gates of the house to the gates of the compound.
The neighborhood, yeah.
In the neighborhood, went out to the first set of traffic lights and stopped. And it was at that point the van got descended on by beggars.
Right.
I'd never seen beggars coming from New Zealand. And some of them were really grotesque, scarred faces and mangled hands and things. And who knows whether that's how they're born or whether they were, whatever, who knows. But it was such a traumatizing moment for me. I looked at it and I thought, God, what do you do with that? Because in New Zealand, we're all, reasonably well off, and, there's lower class, but nothing like that, nothing like the poverty. And we didn't have beggars ever. And I looked at the guys to see what was their reaction. And they were oblivious because they grew up with it, right? They were just doing whatever they're doing. And in that moment of contradiction, I could not understand the inequity of the wealth that I was experiencing and the poverty that I saw. And so in that moment, I thought, I need to learn about this. And so when I went to university, that's one of the reasons why I studied politics, to find out what the hell this is all about. That was a defining moment for me. So that would be, I'd go along the line, 17, put a cross. And so what you do is what was it and why was it defining? So what was it? It was the event at the crossroads with the beggars. Why was it defining? It caused me to deeply question my own naivety about how could this inequity live in the world? And there's a third question which goes into what was it really about? That caused you to reflect into it. So what was it? Why was it a defining moment? And what was it actually about? So that third question you reflect on later. Once you've seen the map being filled out, you reflect back on it. Okay, so that's the first exercise, which is the defining moments. The second exercise, which can be done on the same page, is peaks and pits, meaning the real high points in your life. So you could say, wow, I had this girlfriend when I was this age, or I got this shiny new bike when I was that age, or I did whatever, high point at a certain age. Again, it's what, why, and what was it actually about in terms of each of those points. Now, my recommendation would be that you go for far more negatives, pits, because it's in those that you get to see, because a pit is when you've been scratched. Things haven't been going so well and you feel pain, which is because you've been exposed. And the things that we're exposed, we feel the pain of, because you and I can do the same thing and expose the same thing, but it doesn't impact you as much as it does me, because somehow it's much more precious to me. So the pits are actually far more telling around what's really important to you. So what were the pits in your life?
I'll just say this in passing, because I told this to a friend not too long ago, and here I am saying it on a podcast, but I can remember every bad thing I've ever done in my life. Right. And probably not, but I can remember a lot. And if you ask me to list them, as you've just done, I would have a hard time doing it.
Yeah.
But walking around and I might see something and I don't know where you're going exactly with this, but there's a theme to what I consider to be the bad things that I've done in my life. And they really have driven what I'm doing now and why I'm different. Although I still mess up sometimes, and those really hurt.
Yeah.
I still do it sometimes, but that's
so
really
you're on the
interesting.
right track. You're on the right track. So for me, you could say a pit was when I got eviscerated by this leader, but that caused me to learn about leadership. So I would put that in there, and I can't remember exactly how old I was, but that would be in there, right? So on each one, top and bottom, peaks and pits and the defining moments, there's the what was it? So it was when I was eviscerated by this guy. Why did it hurt? Because I felt so exposed. I felt betrayed by a leader. And then what was it actually about? That's the third question that you go, well, I don't know. But now you've got both exercises on the one page. What you're looking to do is, what is the common theme around all of them?
Right.
And that's where you answer
good and bad?
Yeah, good and bad. Yeah, the whole lot, the defining moments, the good and the bad. And that's where you begin to reflect. So what were all of these actually about? So that third question was, what was it actually about?
Where the insight comes in.
Huh? Is where the insight comes in. So self-reflection. Now, all of this is to get you into the territory of your purpose. And it does. Because for me, as an example, the times that I felt my highest elation was when I felt relaxed, when I felt at ease, when I felt at home. Most of my childhood, grew up in a single-parent family, didn't feel very comfortable at home, lived a very self-sufficient life, felt really awkward at home, and I was awkward at school and not many friends. I didn't feel like I belonged. So again, there's a theme around home. So I picked that up. There's something around home. And the way I work when it comes to putting together what I call a resonant purpose statement, it's 2 to 5 words. Why 2 to 5? Because it's easy to remember. So I knew when I went through this, I knew it was something to do with home, because it's something I really want. I wanted to feel at home in my body and myself and who I was, and I didn't. I felt insecure. I wanted to feel at home on this planet. What the hell's going on? This makes no sense to me. And I was walking around bewildered. But I believe that we came from somewhere, we go somewhere. I wanted to know what home was in terms of the greater home. And so, and I knew I was on the right track. There was something about home. And so I played with it. And so for me, it's knowing home. My phrase is knowing home. And knowing home, full stop, sharing home. What that means is, what does it mean to feel at home in your own body? That's the whole mindset piece. So feel relaxed, feel open, feel confident, so that's when we talk about the high energy piece. What does it mean to feel at home on this planet? Even in face of everything else that's going on at the moment, you go, God, is it possible? Yeah, you've got to work at it. And then, you may not want to go there where I go in terms of, I believe there is another life when we die. But so know home, share home. So my whole life, you ask me about my purpose. I'm living my purpose. I teach I'm inside. I'm plugged into perpetual energy supply when I'm doing what I'm doing. I just love it. So to answer, this is a really long-winded way of answering the question around, is purpose important? To me, it's absolutely crucial, absolutely fundamental, because you're plugging yourself into the energy of life.
Mm-hmm.
If I know what I'm supposed to be here for and I get on and do it, it's energized. So I've got a thing called the philosophy of energy, that when you're doing and thinking what you're meant to be doing and thinking, you're energized. When you're not, you're exhausted. So it's almost like, think of it, bullseye. If you're in the bullseye, you're energized, you're feeling great. If when you move further away from that, you feel more and more tired, more and more fatigued, more and more empty, more and more directionless, stuck, whatever. So I believe that energy is in fact our GPS, our guiding, prompting signal. And your thing, your passions, your purpose will be different to mine. But when you do it, and I'd say the fact that it's something to do with teaching and coaching because you love it.
So I love it. Right.
Yeah, there you go. So you're probably already living your purpose. You may not just have phrased it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've got those words, it's like there's this, it just causes trembling throughout the body. It's what I call a resonant vision.
I have phrased it, but my problem is it's almost trite, because my purpose is helping people, help others. But that's not insightful thing to say, but it's true, because I get paid and I help people. Yeah. Sometimes I get paid when I'm not helping people. Sometimes I help people when I'm not getting paid. What I really like is helping and getting paid. But if I'm getting paid and not helping people, in other words, we're not getting results, they're paying me and I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable. I don't like it. Either we're going to figure something out or we're not going to work together anymore, because I can't stand it. And you sit there and say, why not? They're giving you thousands of dollars every month. I said, well, because anyway, so
you're out of alignment.
I have phrased it. I don't think I've phrased it cleverly, but it really is to help people.
The question is not whether you've phrased it cleverly. It's whether when you think it or say it, it energizes you.
Yeah. If
it does that, that's the only criteria. And when I talked about energy and leadership, if you're talking about leadership levels of energy, it's 8 and above. So I'd say to you is, when you say that phrase or think that phrase, does it energize you at an 8 out of 10 level? And if you go, yeah, okay, bingo, you got it.
Right.
You don't have to have fantastic words.
The words don't, but the thought, when I translate the words into a picture of someone, do. So they do have that effect. But, So one thing, I think you touched on it, and maybe you're going to, but the name of your company, your organization, your program maybe is FlowPreneur.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming that subtends from flow.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you define flow? People say the zone a lot, but
yeah, true. So FlowPreneur, obviously a made-up name, and preneur is around drive and mojo, spirit, get up and go. That's what that relates to. The flow piece, yes, that does relate to in the zone. The technical definition is an optimal state of consciousness where we feel our best and we perform our best. Now that's a bit of a technical definition, but we've all been in flow. We've all had experiences of flow at different times. A game of football, and what was interesting is that a team sport, you think, why are team sports so attractive? And you can have a terrible game, but you're in the same team, or you can have this fantastic game, win or lose, you still have this what is it? And what it is they've found is that it's almost like the team becomes like a hive mind, that it's only one mind and everyone knows what to do and where to be, and in exactly the right moment, and you look around, and it can only happen for a couple of seconds or maybe a bit longer. You look around and the ball passes to you and you knew what to do, and someone was there and somehow at the corner of it, or you didn't even see it and you passed that over there and boom, 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 goal scored or whatever. So, and that
by the way, Ethan up there in the picture is a state champion soccer player. So
there you go.
Yeah. So he's nodding when you're talking about the boom, 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 and no look.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
And that's the moment. That's actually why you play the game, is for those moments, those precious moments. In that, your self-consciousness is gone, and it's almost like you're hyper alert, and it feels extraordinary. I remember for me, one was, again, I was around, I don't know, 17, 18. We were tramping, which is going through the bush with a pack on our back.
Right.
We got to the other side where the hut was, took our packs off. I was really knackered, but I went up to the top of a hill to see where we were. And on the way down, I started to run, and then I started to sprint down this hill, creepers, rocks, branches, dangerous as all heck. But for a few moments, I felt like I was flying. That my body, the environment, I knew where to put my feet, I knew how to lean. It was glorious. In fact, so intoxicating. Every tramp I went on, and even now I do trail running, and I think it started back then, is I was looking for another track to run to recapture that feeling. Being in the flow feels so good. Mm-hmm. So that's what they mean, optimal state of consciousness, yada, yada. Now, you can be in the flow with someone at work, you get lost in a conversation, and it goes deep and it goes fast, and you lose sense of self-consciousness. And you get lost in the moment. It's what they call the deep now. Deeply satisfying, deeply productive, deeply insightful, highly memorable. Okay, so the whole FlowPreneur concept is, for most people, getting back into flow is haphazard or arbitrary, or they fall into it, don't know how they got there. And but it's those knee-bending moments where we feel life is beautiful and it's worth living. So what FlowPreneur is about is how do we get back on a regular systemized basis so that it can become a systemized part of everyday life. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's the concept behind it.
If you're, I think I saw it, either we talked about it when we spoke several months ago, or maybe I saw it on your website, but it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have kind of a 4-step process that if you're working with people, beginning with mindset and
yeah,
correct?
sure. Yeah.
Could you kind of describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at energy as crucial, the 3 questions to answer there is, so if I need a consistent 8 out of 10 energy level to feel well-being, and we do, then what sucks our energy? And there is one thing head and shoulders above anything else, because if I say to most people, what do you think sucks your energy? What causes you anxiety? They go, well, him over there, or her over there, or my kids, or bank account, or COVID, or whatever it is, and stuff out there. But in fact, the one thing that causes distress, stress, and ruptures our energy is, in fact, that inner voice that I was telling you about. It's called an inner critic. I can't do this. This is overwhelming. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm inexperienced enough. So I'm not experienced enough. I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not good looking enough. That's the inner voice that goes on in our head, and that is exhausting. So the first module, there are 4, as you mentioned. The first module, Mind State, it addresses that. So it helps plug the holes in the energetic sieve or the energetic colander. And my approach is not one of mindfulness and meditation and breath work and yoga, and which is 99% of what's out there. I go a process called neurosculpting, which is, so that other stuff is good. It works, but it's slow and it's general. I'm interested in fast and specific. So that's that neurosculpting piece that gets taught in there. So that addresses energy leakage. Then we go to module 2, which is called motivators, which is what tops us up with high quality energy. And so here, no surprise, is where purpose sits. So there's curiosities, there's passions, there's autonomy, there's purpose, there is gratitude, and that's what goes into. These are all the things that nature has built into us to cause us to be energized by. The third module is called mastery, and that is, it's looking to address the knowing doing gap. So I hear things, but I'm not implementing. So how do I implement this good knowledge that I've learned on a consistent basis? It's called, how do I generate a habit? Okay. And so that whole mastery section is around habit creation and bad habit destruction. So practicality around that. So breaking it down. And then the final module, the 4th module, is on flow itself, which is the neuroscience or the triggers, an understanding about what causes, enables, and what stops flow from happening. And so that's the whole FlowPreneur. It's around energy. Get your energy up, and you're halfway there.
So I'm an American, and I obviously want results right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I say that facetiously, but how
No,
long does it
everyone
take
does.
for people to transform and at least see the result? I mean, start seeing results pretty quickly, and then is it a
Yeah,
lifetime exercise to become better and better and better, or is
yeah.
it just like,
So
oh man,
there's two transformations. The first happens really fast, and that's the whole mindset stuff. That's when you come to see, oh, it's not that, it's that. Ah, and you feel like weights off your shoulders. And so that the first module is arguably the most powerful, because it moves you into a state of openness, relaxedness, confidence. It lifts your energy, right?
right?
So that happens really fast. That's high impact. There's fast and there's slow transformation. The slow transformation is the implementation, is building it into your lifestyle, called habits, habit generation. And then the question is, well, how long does it take to build a habit? It's actually the wrong question. It's because once it's established, it's part of your life. You never stop it. Yeah. So if you're looking to do something different, that's a slow transformation, but you see you're a different person over time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, what type of people do contact you and make these changes? Do they tend to be men or women, or do they tend to be people with a crisis, or?
So first off, it's men or ladies, and what I have found they have in common is that they have a sense as to who they can be in the world, and something is blocking or stopping them doing that. So it could be self-doubt, it could be worry, overwhelm. They're not able to get to the person. So there's a sense, it's quite a deep sense of being out of integrity with themselves. So as an example, there was a lady, and she's a barrister. She was works in the area of appeals, or an appellate barrister. And she just wanted to be good. She wanted to be great. But she had been publicly called out by a judge and ripped apart. And so she now had severe self-doubt. And that was what she came to me with, is that she just couldn't see past. She was worried. She had physical nausea. She was procrastinating. So to live the life that she dreamed, that is to be an appeals barrister, was killing her because of what was going on inside her head, and she couldn't get past it. Another guy, or a guy, he's a chairman he runs a board, and he's a senior guy. He would drive to work and just couldn't get out of the car. He'd lost his mojo, didn't know why, and everything was an effort. So he had a deep sense of who he wanted to be and where he wanted to be, but just couldn't get there, and was flailing and self-doubting himself, and could barely see. And he's supposed to be a leader, right?
Right.
How do you give energy when you've got none in yourself? So the sort of people, they've already begun the journey of personal development. That is, they know that they can be more, and they've probably looked into it a little bit. And so they have an awareness, but that awareness has shown them that they've got stuff that they can't work through. So those are typically the sort of people.
One other question, because I've dealt with friends and then also business owners, and I will use the word clinically depressed, but I mean, it's not just, it is not just a bad attitude, whether they're on medication or not, but
Sure.
Can the same exercises and disciplines and methodologies maybe not eliminate, but improve people who are depressed?
Yeah. So when you think about, let me tell you a story about a famous rugby player in New Zealand. So the equivalent is your American football.
Right.
Now, he was a star. I think he was about 18 when he was in the All Blacks. I don't know if you've heard about the All Blacks, but if you look on in the internet for the best professional team of all time ever in any sport across any country.
Well, you get the Oklahoma Sooners.
you get the All Blacks in the top 10 twice.
Are these the guys that do the dance before the?
Yeah.
I'm leaving. I've seen those guys. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Happened to be in New Zealand.
Oh, well, lo and behold, we do have Stephen Adams up here, although he just left.
Yeah.
Well, he just got traded. But go ahead. We're in your story.
So John Kerwin is his name. He was on the wing, very fast, highly respected. Got to the All Blacks, I think maybe about 20, and was just carving through the opposition. Now, there was a moment where in the game he got past the ball. There was no one else there. That's the try line, which is, I don't know what you guys call it, but you got to pass a line and drop down afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was in front of him. He should have, a couple of steps and he was there, right? He dropped the ball. Obvious goal, obvious try, what we call a try, but he fumbled. And he said at that point, he became incredibly critical on himself. So remember I was talking about those two voices. You got one voice and you got another. That other voice was hammering him like a very loud noise in his head, saying, "You idiot, you've messed up again." He became hypercritical about everything about himself. And what that did, because think of it as an internal bully, it was leaking energy. So you imagine saying to yourself in a loud voice, "You idiot."
Right.
You're always like that. Why can't you imagine that? And it's exhausting, right? And he said, what was interesting is that he's one of the very first men of note, because All Blacks, tough guy. It's a very testosterone-y, full-on, full-contact sport, right? These are hefty he-men. He was one of the first, if not the first, to acknowledge his vulnerability and say that he had depression. And he's written books about it, and he's now the spokesperson on behalf of men's mental health and so on. But he's written books about his going through the process.
Gave him a purpose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, if you take it back, he recognized that it all started from the point when he dropped the ball and he self-criticized. So he began hammering himself, and it leaked energy. So when we're talking about depressed, you see clinically depressed people, it's actually the voice in their head
talking
that's talking and yelling. And in the end, it's a bit like what they call beaten wife syndrome, where in the end they just give up and they just comply. It's a bit like he complied to his own bully, and in the end he lost. He could no longer play rugby and lost the skills and all the rest of it. He became a vegetable, by comparison, nice guy, but vegetable compared to how he was. So what we're talking about is it starts with a voice in the head, and it's understanding what that is and getting to see whether in fact what the voice is saying is true or not. So was he an idiot? No. Was he always getting it wrong? No. Was he pathetic? No, but that was what the voice was saying very loudly. And so that was what the body said, oh, so this is what you want us to be like, pathetic, lousy, hopeless. All right, well, we'll do that for you. And loss of energy. And when you have low energy for a long period of time, it's called depression.
Bruce, a couple more questions. We've been on here. This has been really good. First thing I want to ask you is there something I haven't brought up that's important that our listeners need to hear? That's a proverbial question that I didn't ask that I should have, and you'd like people to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we did that exercise around defining moments and peaks and pits, and I said, do spend time on the pits, because it's the pits that can actually drive you and cause a defining moment. And I gave you one about this guy who eviscerated me and put me on the path of leadership. Now, I'm an introvert, and one of the reasons why I got into the mindset work is because I don't know if I ever had depression. I was never assessed with it, but I've had extreme self-doubt, extreme lack of confidence. And when I had my own business, started 2002, I was fascinated by leadership, but I played small. I did what you usually did, but struggled. So you have incremental growth, but I was never really that satisfied. Now, fast forward, because we were talking about, well, what moves you into a state of leadership and self-leadership, and I said, well, extreme pain. In 2016, started in 2015, we've got two daughters. Danny, at the time, was 24, moved to 25, and at the age of 25, she got diagnosed with lymphoma cancer, and 9 months later, passed. So that was devastation.
Couldn't imagine.
You expect your parents to die before you, and whilst it's painful and there's massive grief and a rupturing, it's not doesn't feel unnatural. But when you have your daughter dying, it just, at an existential level, it just cracked me open, and I literally felt like I was naked in the universe, just floating in the universe. At a deep level, and I came to realize that I had a fundamental belief: if you do good in the world, good things happen. And so that got absolutely broken, because this was not a good thing, let alone the actual pain of what she went through in chemo. I'm sure people listening to this will have actually experienced people with cancer and the chemo. I mean, it's carpet bombing the body. It's horrific. Anyway, without going into all of what she went through, one of the elements of lymphoma cancer is that over time your muscles melt, and so you can't walk, then you can't pick things up, then you can't suck through a straw, and so on. And so I had a conversation with her, the last person actually to have I had a 3-hour conversation with her 3 days before she died. And in that conversation, it was incredibly powerful, because the role of father-daughter, which is how you usually refer to you have a conversation, you're coming out of that place, it was gone, and it was life to life, because she was already partway gone. She was departing, she was leaving her body because the body couldn't do things. She was very clear that she was dying and not very far away. So the level of conversation, there were no filters. And she said, "Dad, ask me anything you want, no secrets." And in that moment, I just felt this, it was life to life. And I had to be totally honest and come out from my life. I couldn't pretend, because it was such a potent meeting. And it was in that state that she said, "Dad, you've got to promise me something." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "You've got to step up." Now, in that moment, it's almost like she'd seen into my soul, and she'd seen my own personal anguish, self-doubt, lack of confidence, and playing small, and said, "Enough." And she didn't say what that stepping up was, but in that moment, of course, you can't say, "No, I'm not going to." You say yes with every fiber of your being. And so as a consequence, that was one. There are a whole series of what I call Danny's gifts, and that was one that, out of that extreme pain, I was clamoring for, what does stepping up mean? And so for me, it's meant going global, which is how you and I met, podcasts and so forth, and all putting together. That was another reason why FlowPreneur, consistent high performance or peak performance, was what is the antidote to stress? Because she'd been through, we all have cancer cells in us or cancer viruses in us, but what triggers it is the stress of the environment, or sometimes toxins and things. And she'd been through extreme stress. And so part of my stepping up was, how do you provide the tools to overcome this extreme stress, which is where the whole VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, that whole thing comes from. And it's right, we're living in VUCA on steroids. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. How the heck do we get through? It all equals stress. So what is stress? What causes stress? And that's why I go into the whole energy piece, because stress leaks our energy, but what causes stress, 95% of it is the inner critic, our interpretation of what's going on in the outer world, which is why I've spent so much time focusing on that area. So in terms of me stepping up, in terms of my own self-leadership, in terms of promoting what it is that I do and so on, that came out of pain, extreme pain. I don't know, I can't state whether we're far more motivated by pain than we are by pleasure. So I don't know, I haven't investigated, I can't state that we've got to go through extreme pain to step into leadership. I think sometimes you're going from good to great, you've got to go through self-leadership, but certainly in my experience, we eject ourselves out of pain. So pain is an incredible motivator.
I agree with that. We always talk with people about if you don't have pain and or pleasure, has to be greater than the resistance to change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pleasure being a vision for the future. But it really is. That's why my mission statement is to eliminate suffering in small business, because I see a lot more of that. People don't come dancing in here and say, I made 35 million last year, I want to make 37. There are people like that, and we sometimes get there, but that's not why they come usually. It's to get out of pain. And so
totally.
I really appreciate your telling that story, Bruce. That's very candid and open of you. And I have one statement, then one more question for you.
Sure.
There's a book called Unf Yourself. Have you heard of that book by Gary John Bishop? It's the word spelled out. I think he had the same word in New Zealand. And it looks like a little bit of a glib deal, but he's actually pretty good. And one of the takeaways out of there, he quotes some studies. He said, we all have around 50,000 thoughts per day.
Yeah.
Every one of them is a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
My addendum to that is, what are you saying? So
exactly.
Completely congruent with what you're talking about. And so that would be my last real question here is a listener who is intrigued. I think that I was going to try to recap everything he said, but I got 4 pages of notes and I can't really read them. I was writing so fast, but they can listen to this again.
Sure.
But that's the one thing is listen to what you said to yourself this morning. I'm a loser. I'm not going to get it. That guy's a big, sophisticated guy, and I'm just a little guy. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're arrogant. One other thing you said was your rugby player was all
Kerwin.
And you didn't ever mention tears. I know rugby players don't cry, but I always think, and I'm thinking of our audience here, a bunch of contractors as being tough people, women and men. They're tough people. And I used to think that when I started coaching, but not every client. But I've had a lot of big old boys sitting in my office crying.
Yeah.
We get there after a while, and I hope it's not because my coaching skills are that bad. And you already cashed my check, and I don't get it. No, I tend to naturally think, wow, look at this guy. He's a physical presence. He's doing pretty well. He's driving nice stuff. He looks good. He's authoritative. And a couple of months later, we're sitting in there, and the tears well up. And you say, well, by golly, what do you know? They're people too. And I am not mocking that. I am 100% opposite of that. So if you had one takeaway, somebody listening saying, I'm going to go home, kiss my wife or my husband and go to bed. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to do one thing. Do you have one thing that they can do, that action item in your, vision, action item and mindset? One thing that can kind of carry over that they could get started with this.
Well, I could go at I could go flow technical, or I could go what's most meaningful and what's most energizing. And I'll tell a bit of a story and then I'll give you the answer. Okay. And so as cavemen, or in our Homo erectus days, Homo sapien days, but when we weren't sophisticated modern day people, they would go out hunting the mammoth or whatever. And they lived by a fundamental belief. I only found this out recently, and I don't know whether it's made up, but it certainly is a powerful story, that they learned that you kill it and you eat what you can. Where do you put the surplus food? And okay, you carry it and take it back to the tribe. But if there's what you do is you make sure the surplus food goes into the very safest place it can. And where's the safest place? Into the guy that you're with, into your friends. You feed them because they'll be able to take care of you. And if he's thinking the same thing, he feeds me because I would take care of him. And I thought, okay, true or not, it's a really good story. That what do you do with wisdom? What do you do with insight? You give it away. You put it in the most valuable vessel that you can. So in answer to your question, I'm not going to give you a flow science answer. It is tell someone precious to you that you love them.
Wow. You know, my dad, I'm just saying, but it's the same thing. It just popped in my mind. My father died in 95, long gone, but he wrote a little poem and he said, "When you are blue, find something to do for someone who's bluer than you are."
Oh, wow.
That, just tell them I love them. Go do something for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So you fill them up because they will then fill you up.
Worry about yourself and your own problems. You go help somebody. And I mean, you've said it. I know Ethan feels that way. I feel this way, is that we're all motivated by helping other people. At some level, I think virtually everybody is. Yeah. And that's kind of the point of what sounds to me like you said. Tell somebody you love them and then help somebody else. And it's certainly true of my Christian friends and my belief that when you give, it comes back in quantities. So, wow, thank you for that. How can listeners find you? And do you want, will you accept some emails, or will you just give them your website? We'll put it in the show notes, but.
Yeah, sure. I mean, email is great. Bruce at FlowPreneur, FLOW, preneur, PRENEUR.co.
co.com, right?
.co, yeah, not com. Or look me up on LinkedIn, so Bruce Ross, New Zealand. Okay. Or just look up the website, flowpreneur.co. And there's podcast, there's your podcast, or soon to be your podcast there. Any and all of the above, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Bruce, has really, I wish Khalil had been here too. Khalil would really have enjoyed this, and I hope maybe at some point you meet him, at least virtually. Right. He's another compassionate guy, he really is. So
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your effort, and we will certainly let you know when this is published. So, Bruce, thank you. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Terrific.
See you.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.